Hi, everyone. So I had lunch with my daughter-in-law just now, and she was asking me, so what's the title of your talk? Building Apptainer containers on demand using Globus compute. So, I mean, that really says it all. So hi. So I'm Ben Galewsky. I'm a senior research programmer at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. And my background is in IT consulting and industry. And about 6 years ago, I moved into research computing, and this is the best job of my career. I'm so happy to be here. So I've been a past contributor to Globus Compute and lead a small team of solutions architects at U of I, where we go in and help people explore how to use Globus Compute and do some initial implementation for them. I work on a project called Garden. I got my Garden colleagues over here, which is all about publishing machine learning. You'll hear more about it tomorrow. Anyway, I work on contribute to Garden. I work in particle physics with another group, and then I'm starting up a practice of doing data management consulting. So coming into projects, grants, and helping them with their data management woes. But today we're going to be talking about dependency management in Globus Compute. And I stood in this very spot last year to telling you all about container service. And today I'm going to be telling you all the lessons we learned about container service. And I'll be introducing a new product, custom image building library, and invite you to try it out. So Globus Compute is such a great promise. You write a function, you import all the stuff that you want in there, you send it off to your endpoint, and you get module not found, no module named pandas. So the current solution for how to work around this is in your endpoint configuration, you provide some worker init code, and you can say, for this endpoint, every single worker, when you launch them, make sure you do pip install pandas, problem solved. Well, yeah, except this is very hard-coded. Every environment that you want to work with is going to have its own endpoint. It's very opaque. Users can't see what you put into there. So it works, but definitely has some drawbacks. So last year we talked about the container service. So this is a fast API service, runs inside the AWS environment where Globus Compute runs. It was interfaced in with the Globus Compute SDK, and so you can provide like a repo to Docker style container spec. It goes into our web service, off to the container service. It builds it, pushes it up to Docker Hub, registers it with FunkX, sends you back the container ID, and all is well. And it's very nicely integrated with all that stuff. So it worked. It was very interesting, very convenient for users. But one of the problems is this represented like a complete unbounded compute requirement on our infrastructure. Like, this is interesting. How popular is this going to be? Our initial implementation had all the Docker images going to my personal Docker Hub, which it's kind of nice. But we also now have a problem of like unbounded storage requirements of all these Docker images. And then as it stands, using Docker containers only works for the Kubernetes-based endpoints. And as it turns out, DL Hub and Garden were the only ones that actually are using the Kubernetes endpoints. That's not really a very generally useful solution. So went back to the drawing board and started thinking about like, okay, what's an alternative? On HPCs, Apptainer is a much more preferred container environment. And so we started thinking about a custom image builder library. And so this is just a library. It actually runs on any endpoint. It was actually just implemented as a Globus Compute Python function. So it accepts repo to Docker style container specs, just like the container service. But what it does is it runs over on your endpoint as a Python task, expands that spec out into an Apptainer environment file, which is like the equivalent of a Docker file for Apptainer. It does a popen, builds there, goes into some directory, returns that path, and now we can register that as a container within Globus Compute. So more concretely, there's this function in this library, the only function user function in there is build and register containers. So you pass in your Globus compute client, you tell it which endpoint you want it to build on, what name you want to give the file, and then like that repo to Docker style, here's all the pip packages, here's the conda packages, apt, and you can also give it a URL and it'll download the contents of some public URL into your Apptainer image, and then you get back a container. So here's a little example. So this is my endpoint, which is running on the Delta HPC, an old compute client. And so I'm telling it, based on Python 3.8, and would you please install pandas? And so this churns for a while, and then when it comes back, you just get a container ID. And then with funcx, or you can just say with the executor, go ahead and run my function. Oh, I don't have my function here, but the function just does that pandas data frame, and it works. And so it's pretty neat because there's nothing for us to maintain. It's just Globus compute. And so you can try it out. Pip install custom image builder. Little thing we discovered is that in Globus Compute 3.0, the Apptainer support is broken. So you'll have to use 2.2.0 of the endpoint until that bug is fixed. Thank you. And that also has a 3.9 ridiculous dependency in there. So, but with that caveat, if you have a Globus Compute endpoint running somewhere that has Apptainer available, you can just pip install this on your client or on your laptop and run the example. So, really grateful for all of my colleagues and for the National Science Foundation. And that's that.
Cool. Any questions? One from Dan.
Yeah. Do these get cache?
No, I did not say cache. Did I say cache?
It would make sense to do some kind of caching.
It would make great sense to hash like the
And cache.
yes, but you would hash into the cache. Yes. So that would be client code, unless the containers. I mean, one thing that would be fun is if we keep the container object in the database, if I could stuff some arbitrary hash into there, and then ask, here's a nice. We were talking yesterday about whether this container object in the Globus Compute database still makes sense. It'd be really neat if I could put an arbitrary hash in there and say, could you tell me which container satisfies that arbitrary hash? Thank you.
So with this Apptainer service, like we can bypass the procedure to upload a container to Docker Hub, right? And does it require any like root privilege to build a Apptainer on a?
That's the beauty of Apptainer, is that it's all very, as far as I know, is anyone gonna call me out? As far as I know, Apptainer, that's the whole beauty of Docker, has so many security problems, and Apptainer addresses most of those. And we're just now talking about, there's a really nice workflow of building an Apptainer from a Docker image. And we actually are considering making a change to this. So you could just say, there's another entry point to this library would be, please build me an Apptainer from this Docker image, and it would download it, build it. Now it just give you the path, but now it's local on your HPC.